Hey, I wanted to make a video here about working with a guitar that has a Floyd Rose on it and just using like common household items to help you through the process. I know in a lot of the different groups that I'm in, as far as guitar groups go, there is a lot of confusion. People aren't sure, they don't know how to do it, they get upset because the spring takes forever to tune it. So I figured I'd make a quick video to try and help some of those people that are kind of new in with the Floyd Roses to to have a little better time of it and to really enjoy the benefits of it. Now, there's a couple things that you're going to want to know the way that the Floyd Rose works in the first place. If you don't know how Floyd Rose works, this isn't a Floyd, this is an Edge, which is for the Ibanez brand, but it's basically the same concept. In the back, as you look at it, at least on mine, I have these springs here. And the springs in combination with the tension from the strings on the other side create a balance. And you have to get them to balance in order for it to stay in tune and to work correctly. A lot of people have a problem doing this. Now, as you notice on this guitar, it's a little different. It only has two springs, and it has a larger block over here. But I got some heavy-duty springs on here, and I only used two because this guitar specifically is with nines on it that's tuned a half step down. So really I only needed to do, if I upgraded the springs to a little heavier duty ones, and I could only need two because they hold the same tension for me to balance out the springs. So anyways, really what you're going to want to do is when you undo the spring or the string tension, this block right here, it goes this way and it moves towards the body. Okay, so then what happens is you lose the tension here in these springs, and then as it sits for a while, you have to recreate the tension, and it goes back and pulls until it balances out to the right spot. Now, in order to try and prevent doing this, there's a couple things you can do. If you have what I used to do before I upgraded this block here, because it's a lot thicker than the one that came on here, really you can find a bolt, any old bolt will do, that fits in between the body and the block. Something that you still grab onto. You don't want it to push on the block, create more tension. You want it to just be able to slide right in here, maybe be a little loose, so that when you undo the string tension, it will just clamp down on it and it'll hold in position. That way you won't lose really any of the tension here coming from your springs. So a little bolt, that's one way to do it. Different screwdrivers, if you have a screwdriver that has the right width that you can stick in there. For instance, I have one now with the new block. This kind of goes in there, barely sits in there, which is what you want. But if I put this in there and undid one of the strings, just some of the tension on it, it would lock this in place and it would stay right where it is. If you have a wife that likes furniture, you might have a bunch of these around. You know what I'm talking about? These cheap wrenches that you use once and they bend and then you throw away. So what you could do, in a lot of cases, and I've done this in the past, is you just collect a few of them. Some of them are different thicknesses, but if you grab them and you put them together and you just tape them, you could actually tape them together to get them to the right thickness. Here, these two actually are perfect fit for these. So if I were to just slide those in there and undo it, it'll hold the tension in place. So this is going to allow you to take off all the strings at the same time so that you can clean up the guitar like this. Clearly, look at this thing. It's just filthy. And that's how I do it sometimes, or in the old days. But there's other actual things that I use at this point. Is one of these here, which is actually called a trem lock. I don't know, this thing's 25 years old. I got it from a musician's friend before Guitar Center purchased them. They actually had some cool stuff. And it's kind of a beveled little plastic unit with some rubber foam on the back. So really it just slides right underneath these posts here in the back. I slide it right up to the springs, the fine tensioning claw that's underneath. You just move it back like 1/8 of an inch. You'll see that it's under all of the posts, so that when I undo the tension, it'll just lock it and it'll just sit there right in the position that it's at. So this is another cool thing. I don't even know if they sell them anymore. I've managed to hold on to this thing, but it is probably one of the greatest tools. Now, if you have a recessed Floyd that's recessed into the body, this isn't going to work for you. You're probably going to want to go with the other methods. This one would probably be a great method if you have these little cheapy tools, because actually do come in handy. I know they don't work really well for what they were intended, but as far as shims to hold the trem system, they work awesome. Okay, so that's just a few of the ways. Now, another thing I recommend is a working surface. You're going to want something that you can work with. Now this pad, this is actually a yoga mat, believe it or not. My wife tried to get me to do yoga once, and I did it for about 5 minutes, and I fell over and took out the closet door, so we won't be doing yoga anymore. So what I've done is I've turned this into a guitar mat. Now I have this piece up here at the top. This was from an original guitar mat that I had years ago that just came apart. It was foam, it was bad material, so it just kind of tore apart after I wrapped it up and unwrapped it thousands of times. So this actual rubber yoga mat works a lot better. Fits the guitar nicely. Now if you don't have something like this, there's a real easy way to go. I always used to do this. You get a paper towel. These are shop towels. This is kind of the minimum thickness here that I wanted to show. So if it's round, just squeeze it until it's kind of flat, and you can literally just take the guitar and put it on there. That'll allow you access to the tuning pegs at the top. Obviously the thicker the better, it'll give you a little more room, but that's typically what I used to do. You just get some sort of paper towel roll and stick it under there to make your life easy. The yoga mat is great, again, because it doesn't slip. The guitar won't move or slip. It's easy to clean if you get any chemicals on it or what have you. So moving forward, just so you guys know, it's really not that difficult. If you can just find kind of a shim or something to move in the back here, it will make your life really easy. You'll be able to actually take all your strings off. You'll be able to clean up the whole guitar. You'll be able to put it all back on. And as soon as you start tightening up the strings and you start getting it towards the tuning that you're at, those shims or whatever you've got in there kind of just fall out on their own. So just be careful with them, but then you'll know once you've done that, it'll be much easier for you to tune. Now, obviously, there's a couple of other things you're going to want to do. You're going to want to stretch the strings. Anytime you put new strings on a guitar that has a Floyd Rose, before you go and tune it or you tighten it down, obviously you're going to get it up to tuning the first time after you put the strings on. But then grab these things and really kind of just pull on them. You know, not hard because you don't want to pull it out of the block, but hard enough to where you can pull the end, the string tensioning end, and make sure that that's tight because it stretches from there. The string itself stretches. So if you can try and pull some of that stretch out of it right at the beginning, it'll prevent it from stretching once you've locked the nut at the top, which again will help you to keep the guitar in tune. So they do take a little bit of time to set it up, but if you do take the time and you really go through it and do it right, you shouldn't have any problems. Now, another thing that I've noticed with my Floyd Rose especially, or at least this edge style one, is I noticed that if I actually, see if we can get a better shot of this, if you'll see how I've got the strings there on there. Most people cut the ends off. I actually leave the rounded ends on there and I feed it all the way up to the post. So this kind of prevents it from slipping. You know, if you cut the end off and there's a little pointy end sticking out, you know, it can move. It can slightly stretch and go into that hole as you're pulling it out. So as you're turning your string tension up to tune up your guitar. So putting it like that actually helps to keep the guitar in tune. So again, if you're using a Floyd, this is a great technique and it really, really, really helps. I also try to do 2 to 3 winds, which I find also helps me to keep the tuning more stable. So really the most important part is that if you can keep the trem system stable during your string change, you really won't have too many problems. Once you get it back on there, it should tune up a lot quicker. And again, you can use just standard household items. I got these cheapy little, IKEA wrenches or whatever the heck they are, and if you just get a standard screwdriver, something that fits, and again, if it's too small, you can always wrap tape, like electrical tape or something around the screwdriver, just so that it's thick enough for you to get it in between there, and so that it'll hold your trem system in place. Other than that, I would also recommend that if you are changing the strings, get your fine tuners, kind of put them in the middle, not all the way up, not all the way down. Figure out the midpoint and put those there. So if you got the strings off of it, set it at the midpoint, because that'll help you to balance everything out as well. So anyways, I hope these tips help. Again, paper towels, whatever you got to hold it. There's just a few household items that you can use. You guys be creative. I'm sure you are. There's all kinds of stuff you can do. I've actually used an eraser before for the back of the trem system to fit in between the block. You buy a thick eraser and just kind of carve it down to the size you need. So there's all kinds of different ways you can do it. So as long as you stabilize that way, and you can take off the strings and you can clean the whole guitar and not have that huge headache of trying to tune it all back up. Anyways, I hope this was helpful for some of you guys. If you have any questions, you have any comments, let me know. I'd be happy to try and assist. Thanks again.